In small towns, battles aren't always fought with fists or banners. Sometimes, they're fought over front porches, parking spaces, or a simple wooden carport. Elena Brooks thought she had left the noise of the world behind when she moved to Aspen Ridge, Oregon. But peace, she would learn, isn't guaranteed, especially when power goes unchecked behind quiet smiles and polished rules. What started with a missing structure would spiral into something much bigger, a fight for fairness, for dignity, and for the soul of a community too long silenced by fear. This isn't just a story about property. It's a story about standing tall when everyone expects you to sit down, and the fire it takes to turn injustice into change. Elena Brooks tightened her grip on the steering wheel as her car rolled up the familiar winding road into Aspen Ridge. It was a postcard-perfect fall afternoon, the kind that made you forget the world could be cruel. Golden leaves danced along the quiet streets, catching sunlight like tiny sparks. But as Elena rounded the corner to her driveway, her stomach dropped. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. The rustic wooden carport she loved, the one that had shielded her car from the harsh Oregon rains, was gone. Not damaged, not disassembled, gone. In its place sat a few broken planks and a patch of upturned earth. As if someone had ripped a part of her life away and tossed it aside like garbage. Elena killed the engine and sat frozen for a moment, heart hammering in her ears. She scrambled out of the car, stumbling toward the wreckage. Her mind raced for explanations. Had there been a storm, vandalism, a city order? But there was no notice taped to her door, no construction crews, no workers, no signs of an official project. Just silence. And worse than the silence was the realization dawning at the edges of her mind. This wasn't random, her hands trembling. Elena called the HOA office. A chirpy, automated voice put her on hold. Classical music buzzed through the line, sickeningly cheerful against the knot growing in her chest. Finally, a clipped voice answered. "This is the Aspen Ridge Homeowners Association. How may I help you?" "My carport," Elena said, forcing her voice to stay even. "It's gone." "Can you tell me what's going on?" There was a pause, then a casual reply. "It was removed for non-compliance with community aesthetics, per section 14C. Elena blinked. "Removed, without warning." "You never notified me." Another pause. "We sent an email," the voice said. "Perhaps it went to your spam folder. Regardless, it's already been handled." Already been handled. Like it was a dirty dish someone had wiped off the table. Elena's fists curled. "You had no right." "If you have concerns," the woman interrupted, "you can file a formal complaint with the board. Good day." The line went dead. Elena stood there for a long moment, phone limp in her hand, staring at the blank sky where her carport used to be. Anger began to seep through the shock, a slow, rising tide. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a message. Someone, somewhere behind a desk in that shiny HOA office, had decided her property, her home, her life didn't matter. They hadn't asked. They hadn't cared. They had simply taken what they wanted and left her to deal with the wreckage. As the sun sank lower and the shadows grew longer, Elena felt something shift deep inside her. Not fear, not helplessness. Resolve. Aspen Ridge had rules, but Elena Brooks knew how to uncover the truth. She had spent years chasing stories others tried to bury, and she wasn't about to let a petty tyrant with a clipboard silence her now. Whatever had started here, whatever game they thought they were playing, Elena would find the truth. And this time, she'd make sure everyone saw it. The next morning, Elena woke up to a clear, bitter truth. If she didn't fight this, no one would. Aspen Ridge liked its silence too much. Order over justice. Appearances over honesty. She started where any journalist would research. Buried in the dusty bylaws of the HOA, Elena found a glaring fact: her carport was explicitly permitted under regulations passed 5 years ago. If the rules had changed, they should have notified every homeowner in writing. With a public vote, No such vote had taken place. Fueled by coffee and anger, Elena drove slowly through the winding streets of Aspen Ridge, documenting every carport, gazebo, and pergola. There were dozens, some in far worse condition than hers had ever been. Yet none of them had been torn down. A pattern emerged. The properties targeted for violations all belonged to newer residents, those who hadn't yet donated to the Community Enhancement Fund that Bradley Turner, the HOA president, heavily promoted. At first, Elena thought maybe it was just greed, but it was deeper. Turner wasn't just enforcing rules. He was building a private empire. Each demolished structure allowed him to pressure owners to upgrade homes using contractors he personally recommended. Elena suspected kickbacks, favoritism, backroom deals. It wasn't just unethical. It was illegal. The realization tightened in her chest like a fist. This wasn't about one missing carport. It was a machine, and she had just gotten caught in its gears. Still, suspicion wasn't proof. She needed hard evidence. That night, Elena attended a supposedly open HOA meeting held in the sterile community center. Turner sat at the head of a long, polished table, wearing a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Around him were his loyal board members, nodding puppets in pressed shirts. Elena sat in the back, invisible, recording everything. The meeting quickly revealed what she feared. No public disclosure of project costs. No discussion of community votes. Approvals made behind closed doors. Rubber stamped under vague claims of aesthetic improvement. Worse, she caught snippets of conversation after the meeting, Turner laughing with his inner circle about how new blood needs to know who's boss around here. Elena clenched her phone tighter in her pocket. She had the recording. It wasn't enough to bring Turner down yet, but it was a start. She reached out to Miguel Alvarez, a civil rights attorney with a fierce reputation for taking down corrupt HOAs. When Miguel listened to the audio, he leaned back slowly in his chair and smiled grimly. "They're not just bullying you, Elena," he said. "They're violating state property laws, civil rights, and fiduciary responsibility statutes." "Can we prove it?" she asked, her voice low but steady. Miguel's smile widened. "Let's not just prove it," he said. "Let's make it so public they can't hide under their own damn porches." Plans started forming rapidly. Collect sworn statements from other affected homeowners. Expose financial irregularities. Use the local news to shine a light where Turner least wanted it. But Turner wasn't about to let his empire crumble without a fight. Within days, Elena received a warning, a letter, slid under her door without a stamp or signature, written in careful, cold words. "Walk away. This isn't your fight. You'll lose more than just a carport if you keep digging." Elena stood there in the dim hallway, the paper crinkling in her shaking hands. Fear flickered sharp and real, but only for a moment, because underneath the fear was anger, and underneath the anger was something stronger purpose. They thought they could scare her into silence. They were wrong. This time, Elena Brooks was just getting started. The night of the HOA General Assembly came faster than Elena expected. The usually sleepy community center buzzed with unease. More residents had shown up than ever before, faces tight with suspicion, whispering nervously in the corners. Word had spread. Elena's quiet investigation, combined with Miguel's strategic leaks to local media, had worked better than they hoped. People were angry not just about the HOA rules, but about being treated like pawns in a private game. Bradley Turner stood at the front of the hall, perfectly calm, dressed in a sharp navy suit, the perfect picture of control. He welcomed everyone with that same oily smile, pretending not to notice the cold stares. Elena sat near the front, phone in hand, evidence ready. Miguel sat beside her, a quiet wall of confidence. Turner cleared his throat. "Before we begin, I'd like to address some baseless rumors that have been circulating." Perfect. He was walking straight into it. Miguel gave Elena a tiny nod. She stood up. Actually, Elena said, voice clear and steady. Before we proceed, I have a few documents to share. Turner stiffened, but smiled tightly. This isn't the time. Ms. Brooks. I think it is. Elena said. She held up a folder. Copies of financial records. HOA meeting transcripts. Emails Miguel had legally obtained, all tied together with the recordings of Turner boasting about controlling the community. The room shifted. Whispers grew louder. One by one, Elena exposed it all. The illegal demolitions. The hidden contractor kickbacks. The intimidation tactics against dissenting homeowners. Turner's face paled. His grip tightening on the podium. Residents began shouting, demanding explanations. Several stormed toward the front, waving copies of their own inflated HOA invoices. Realizing they'd been cheated for years, Turner tried to regain control. This is slander, he barked. She's lying. But before he could say more, flashing blue lights filled the windows. Two uniformed officers entered the room. One approached Turner calmly, hand resting lightly on his belt. Bradley Turner, the officer said. You are under arrest for multiple charges including fraud, coercion, and property damage. The silence that followed was deafening. Turner didn't fight. He just sagged under the weight of it all, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. As he was led away, Elena caught a glimpse of his face, not angry, not even shocked, just empty, as if he had finally realized he was no longer invincible. Outside, neighbors spilled into the parking lot, buzzing with disbelief. Some were angry, some relieved, but most just looked stunned. A heavy rain began to fall, cold and clean, as if the town itself was trying to wash away the rot that had festered too long in silence. Elena leaned against her car, drenched but smiling. Not a smile of gloating, but of release. Miguel joined her under the dark sky. You didn't just get your carport back, he said quietly. You gave this place its voice back. Elena looked at the faces around her neighbors she barely knew before tonight. Now, connected by something deeper than property lines, Aspen Ridge would never be the same. Neither would she.